Hello everyone, welcome to this 1v1 best of 3 matchup between Hexapus and AndreasG, who's now going as CNN. I'm a Philophatic and I'm joined today by Blues. Blues, what do you think about this map?
I am still loading into it.
Okay, well, I will comment a little bit about it then. There's a interesting science spot down here to the lower left-hand side of the map. It is a glass colony. Now that science spot's right next to a patch of silicon, so that's pretty decent there. I'd definitely be looking at that. Maybe founding right about now at negative 20k. There's also a interesting robot spot to the left of that science spot, a little bit further away from that glass patch. Not really anything with the scavenger, and Hexapus takes it for 0 debt, which seems way too cheap.
Right, they pretty clearly were basically the two spots you pointed out, and science spot is definitely better.
Andreas decides to go for a different spot, going for an expansive found right next to some iron, also near that silicon.
I suppose the main advantage to that is that it's significantly closer to the water and silicon, but I'd be worried about the aluminum right away. He was slow to founding, so he didn't get to buy up that aluminum cheaply. Does get to the 80 anyway, but it's going to be a bit slower getting off the ground.
Right, Hexapus is the first to HQ2. Things are pretty decent for a scientist found. The power started normal, but it's starting to creep up. It is, like I mentioned, it is a glass colony, but glass did not start high, although it's also creeping up in price steadily. And Andreas also catching up to HQ2, not too far behind. Both players securing some aluminum. Andreas going for this, one of the double tiles.
And once that higher aluminum was gone, those were a pretty reasonable choice, especially since iron started high and Andreas didn't really do much to knock that down early.
Right, and Hexapus as a scientist is not going to be going into iron. Now Andreas is going to be punished for clumping his iron and steel mills together instead of splitting them with this EMP. So both
Hexapus having some amount of trouble trying to scrape together this glass money with the price rising steadily. Food starting low in particular kind of slowed him down on that front, but he's almost there. He should be okay.
Right, Andreas isn't going to be in any better spot. Andreas deciding to go into farms, while Hexapus deciding to go into electrolysis reactors. So Hexapus will be burning more power off of these electrolysis reactors, while Andreas is getting less income off of his farms.
The black market is online.
Interesting to note that Hexapus is buying past for the glass needs, just doing a little bit extra to make that a lot more difficult.
Yeah, unfortunately, Discord seems to be acting up, and I didn't quite catch what you were saying there. Do you mind repeating it?
I was just saying Hexapus is buying a bunch of extra glass past the 40, so he's doing what he can to make Andreas' select more difficult. Andreas having some issues with only one aluminum a second, only these 2 steel mills, everything just a little more difficult for him.
This extra claim going for 24k seems a little bit on the higher side, especially with bribe claim on the black market.
It seems reasonable enough. It definitely is expensive, but I don't expect either player to push too hard for power money. There's a lot of money to be made in power, but getting into it's going to be a bit slow. I'm not sure.
Hexapus deciding to purchase one of those bribe claims and add on to these solar panels. If Andreas is paying attention, he should know that neither solar panel is defended.
On the other hand, his geotherm that's coming online is also undefended, so it's a question of what he prioritizes.
A mutual détente, perhaps, between both players. Hexapus is the first to HQ3. Going to create the triangle. No, going into the greenhouse farms. I expect to see another greenhouse farm, and maybe some glass is in the order of the day. Glass is really high at 182.
Right, Hexapus already with that silicon secured, it'd be very easy to move into glass, instead moving into more solar panels.
Now that power price is really high,
Market is open for business.
so perhaps Hexapus is thinking about shutting down the geothermal plants, except that Andreas did just purchase a goon squad, which he put on that geothermal plant.
Right, what Hexapus might be looking at is that Andreas is pretty stuck where he is. He's not making much money. He doesn't really have avenues to get into the game very effectively. If Hexapus manages to shut down the market, then that's just one more way that Andreas is locked out.
There's a question in chat about the carbon. The carbon is all the way over here, and it's a bunch of lows. Andreas did pull up into HQ3 and is immediately going into triple glass. He's also secured a medium elemental quarry.
Is online. Dangerous explosives available to the highest bidder.
Freezing out all these solar panels and a dust storm on the way, that's going to work out nicely for Andreas, though he's not really operating on much of a power surplus, so it's not necessarily going to take much advantage there.
Congratulations.
No, it's more just punishing Hexapus, making sure Hexapus doesn't pay off too much of that debt. Hexapus deciding to move out of his steel mills and into 2 glass kilns himself. And Hexapus also mutinying Andreas's silicon, and I believe is buying into, yes, immediately started buying into that silicon, trying to shut down Andreas's glass kilns.
There's definitely one reason to be very concerned about going to 3 glass in particular. He didn't have the silicon income to support that in the first place, and if he ever got attacked the way he has, then it just becomes more difficult. Andreas does have the option for his mutinying this high silicon right back. Going for pirates instead.
That seems like a mistake.
Yes.
Mutinying this high silicon means he would get, what, 2.5 a second? Versus these pirates only bring in 10 every, what is it, 10 seconds?
I'm not exactly sure about the fire rate on the pirates.
Anyway, it seems like it's near 10 seconds, so... or worse. Perhaps someone in chat can look that up and inform us. Anyway, Andreas is kind of not making any money other than steel, which is really expensive.
He does have nearly 600 bid bought up, really taking advantage of Hexapus fully transiting out of steel. Definitely a mistake on Hexapus' part.
Here, and with the numbers, 240 for a mutiny on the high silicon, pirates only giving Andreas 100.
Right. The advantage to the pirates is that they can't be countered in any meaningful way, but they're just so much slower than the mutiny would be.
Hexapus deciding to freeze Andreas's steel.
It's a nice thought, but Hexapus really needs to get back into steel himself. He can't keep going with the steel price so high and no production.
Right. In fact, he probably wants Andreas to sell down some of that steel, make it a little bit easier for the upgrade, if he's going to choose to stay in glass instead of moving into steel. Though,
So,
10k for this pleasure dome is really cheap. $105 isn't a ton of money, but it's definitely substantial at this point. Neither player going to be making more money, so this is just a nice little edge that Andreas can have right now, and one that's going to improve as the game continues.
Hexapus. I'm sorry, Andreas mutinying Hexapus. Elemental Quarry Hexapus responds by selling his entire stockpile of silicons, and now silicon's true price is revealed to be $3.
Should not be auto-selling this $3 silicon, but it's okay.
the black market is
We're also
open for
seeing one of the
business.
weaknesses of Andreas' found really starting to show up with this high water price. He only has these 2 water tiles to work with, and that's really not going to be enough to sustain all his livestock production, especially with the scientists setting those prices on the lower side.
Right. That will be a bit of an issue. However, in Andreas' favor, he beat Hexapus to HQ level 4, and Hexapus is kind of stalling out on HQ 3, largely due to these lack of having steel mills up.
Right, Hexapus made a nice move to deny Andreas that easy glass money, but he's just out of steel for far too long, and Andreas really took full advantage of that, even getting up to HQ 5 very quickly.
As Yaren points out in chat, there are core samples on this map. Andreas is on a riverbed, so he can make more water.
That is always fair. Neither player has used core samples up to this point. It's a question of whether or not he noticed them, but
The black market is
it is an
online.
option.
Meanwhile, while we were talking, Hexapus did get up to HQ 4, and Andreas is still 1 HQ ahead, which means Andreas has 6 more production tiles that he could be using. Hexapus has 3 claims he has not put down. Andreas has yet to put down 4 claims.
It is worth noting that neither player has claimed. Oh no, Andreas has claimed 2 of these low carbons. I was gonna say that might have been an opening, but it doesn't seem like
2 carbons moving into a hacker array has 1 more claim.
Let the bidding begin.
Hexapus is moving into a patent lab. I have to wonder if Hexapus realizes that his 3rd steel mill in this triangle is not on iron.
I believe at the time he did put it down. The iron was around $30 instead of $50. Maybe it didn't seem like such a big deal, just to keep that extra adjacency. It is a bit of a questionable move, though.
Hexapus picking up carbon scrubbing for $36,000. Also moving into a hacker array. Andreas is currently hacking electronics, which he doesn't have a stockpile in, but he has some time to fix that. He also sitting on 1 claim that could still be used.
Hexapus also moving to his own hacker array. Neither player seems to have the hacker array spied, so
No, there are spies on the market. They are... Okay, well, Andreas had Hexapus' hacker array spied out. However, Hexapus decided to swap the location of the hacker array all the way to the end on the other side of his base, and he also got rid of the 1 steel mill that wasn't on iron.
The black market is open for business.
Superconductor for Hexapus, which is an interesting pickup. His power is only 86, and is rising during the night, but I don't foresee it rising too much.
one interesting thing to note, Andreas was hacking electronics. He has now moved into an off-world market. These players just don't work together all that well. I mean, it's just raising the price of electronics, making this a bit more expensive, not really being able to take advantage of the hack.
Right.
As opposed to something like iron, where there's a pretty natural way to get involved with that.
Yeah, he has a stockpile of iron 130, iron 18. That would be a pretty good hack for him. I'm not sure that Hexapus has spotted this off-world market. It was very conspicuously put down right next to Hexapus's base, almost hidden as a glass kiln. And Andreas didn't rotate anything else, so
Always should be a bit suspicious when one building in triangle disappears and is immediately replaced by the same building.
spies only cost Hexapus 9k, so he should probably purchase one of those when his black market cooldown is done in 36 seconds or so. And just check that out. Make sure it is in fact an off-world market. Meanwhile, Hexapus is moving into thinking machines. Has been hacking chemicals up, but is now putting a surplus onto electronics.
One that is perfectly timed with the shortage. Except this mutiny.
The black market is open for business.
So Hexapus decided to defend himself fully instead of upgrading. Let's see, let's check out what his upgrade cost is. He needs another additional 40k, and he just gets enough, pays for that upgrade. Has 5 more claims. Well, it'll be interesting to see what he decides to move those claims into. Right now, Andreas is in a pretty sizable advantage. Has 2 off-worlds, one which Hexapus just discovered, and a 140k cash advantage, although part of that cash is tied up in this second off-world, which is now hologrammed and gooned.
Also just many more claims to work with, though I think Hexapus has been working with fine claims to even that up. That's 3-2, not a big advantage in that regard.
One thing I like to see out of potentially both our players this game is chems. Hexapus is keeping chems pretty cheap, and a lot of these other prices are in triple digits. So this sort of screams for an optimization center and some optimizations.
The off-world market is finished and awaiting orders.
Yeah, that would be a reasonable thing. Something like electronics in particular, with a few machine shops at the colony and these continued hacks.
That Pleasure Dome, which you mentioned, went way too low for 9k, is now making 163 a second after accounting for the power cost, or 192 a second in cash. And that's without virtual reality.
The black market is open for business.
Alright, so Hexapus has used one of his claims to go down for a greenhouse farm. Still has 4 claims left. He does a slant drilling and carbon scrubbing. So that makes putting down those claims a lot easier, but he needs to put them down somewhere.
It is interesting to me that this whole time Hexapus has been staying in these chems, which really are worth close to nothing when right now he's moving to some electronics. It just feels like a transition that could have been made much sooner. Or with all his extra claims, just buildings placed much sooner. He actually puts down a 4th chem lab.
Yeah, he continues to hack chems up, sell them down, and then go surplus electronics.
I mean, it's fine to produce some chems to go along with the hacks, but this amount is just completely overdoing it.
He's also moving into a second hacker array and 3 more electronics factories. So right, Offworlds are still pretty high. Andreas is earning between 43 and 42k in pure profit per launch. Hexapus hasn't spied out one of these Offworlds, but hasn't really attacked it. Has a mutiny saved up. Has some EMPs. Unfortunately, those are the only 2 offensive weapons on the black market.
Right. Andreas doing a good job of kind of recognizing that there aren't great tools to attack Offworlds, moving into them pretty early, pretty aggressively, and really, that's really paying off for him. Meanwhile, Hexapus making some of these moves like into thinking machines, really defending his stock, things that aren't going into Offworlds quickly. Yeah. And that's really putting him far behind.
Andreas just has to wait for this one last Offworld launch to finish in 21 seconds, and then he should have enough for the buy. Unless Hexapus decides to pay down some debt, then it will maybe last for the second launch.
Congratulations!
But this game's going to be over pretty soon. Barring some huge unforeseen circumstance, and Andreas should pick up the first victory. Andreas has the buy, just has to realize that he has the buy. Hexapus starting to attack Andreas's Offworld markets, but it's too little, too late. Andreas just needs to sell out of everything, or wait for this one last launch to happen, and click the red button.
Successful Offworld shipment. Make room for the profits.
There we go, Andreas takes game 1. So I think with this game, to
me, the story of the game feels almost entirely just steal.
Steal, yes. I was going to say, not discounting anything that Andreas did. Andreas played pretty well with this found, but it seems Hexapus moves on HQ3, delaying his upgrade to HQ4, and then delaying his HQ4 to HQ5 upgrade. It's kind of what decided the game in Andreas's favor.
There are times when you can sort of make those moves to delay upgrades, do things more to slow your opponent down, but when your opponent is an expansive player, when your opponent's not deeply in debt, those sorts of things don't really play into your favor when trying to drag things out quite so much. As a scientist, you do enjoy your own late game advantages, but you also should have more early momentum to really push forward instead of trying to drag things out when that doesn't necessarily play into your favor.
Right. You only have those late game advantages assuming you get into the late game early enough. This is also a pretty low black market game. I think most of the attacks from both players not happening until later in the match.
A lot of claim buys early on, which are useful, and definitely I can understand as a scientist why you want all these extra claims. You can use them very efficiently. It just often in 1v1 you wonder if just a lot of aggression just works better.
Alright, aggression helps you and hurts your opponent, while buying a claim helps you and doesn't do anything to your opponent.